So fractures are anytime the bone breaks. There are lots of different types of fractures. I'm not going to ask you to know the different types, but just know that a fracture is a break of the bone. So they heal in 4 different stages. We'll go through each of them. So the first one is hematoma, which is basically a blood clot, a bruise. Then a soft callus forms, hard callus forms, and then the bone gets completely remodeled. So step number 1. When the bone breaks, there are a bunch of blood vessels in there that break also, so we get a lot of blood released, and then it clots, and we get this hematoma formation. Second thing that happens is fibrous tissue starts to form on the outside, and this forms like a soft tissue here to kind of protect the bone. Then the osteogenic cells, the osteoprogenitors, and the osteoclasts come in, and the soft callus then forms by the chondroblasts, and then the hard callus comes in and kind of acts as a split. It forms this callus around, which allows the inside to start remodeling. And then finally, the osteoclasts start to dissolve the broken bone pieces, and osteoblasts start to build a new bone, and then the spongy bone gets remodeled into compact bone. So a little bit on the pathology in our bone section. So here on the left, this is what normal spongy bone looks like. And on the right, this is what osteoporotic bone looks like. So you can see there are little holes in here. This obviously is at a much higher risk of fracture. It does not look nearly as strong as on the left side. So osteoporosis is characterized by porous, weak bones. We can diagnose this with something called a DEXA scan. That's basically a big X-ray. And this tells us how dense the bones are. Individuals with osteoporosis are at a very high risk for fracture. Something else that happens as we age is we lose our balance. The combination of loss of balance and weak bones leads to a lot of fractures. Fractures of the hip, of the femur can be life-threatening. So that is why this is such a big deal. Risks. Postmenopausal women. So estrogen protects the bone from being dissolved. As women reach that postmenopausal state, they're not secreting any estrogen, or not nearly as much. So they're at a higher risk, and smoking also decreases the density of the bones. Treatment. We have some medications that we can use to try to slow the rate of bone loss. And there are some new medicines that interfere with osteoclast activity that allow the osteoblasts to start building more bone without interfering, without the osteoclast interfering. Here is a picture. This woman here is showing that characteristic of osteoporosis called a Dowager hump. You can see this hump here is a classic sign of osteoporosis. On the left, healthy spongy bone. On the right, osteoporotic bone. Another disease is called rickets or osteomalacia. So kids that don't have enough vitamin D, like a serious vitamin D deficiency, end up with this kind of bow-legged appearance. And this is increasing now because of the amount of time that individuals are spending inside. They're not getting that sunlight to get that vitamin D. And then soda consumption has increased. Instead of fortified milk, milk is fortified with vitamin D, which helps to create that healthy bone structure. So this is actually not necessarily gone, even though it should be. And then the last disease is called brittle bone disease, or osteogenesis imperfecta. So here, individuals are lacking the collagen that gives bones their flexibility. So when they get any slight pressure on them, they shatter like this. Oh, I lied. One more pathophysiology for you. So ectopic means out of place, and ossification is calcification. So This means ossification happening outside of place. So we want ossification to be happening in our bones, but it can happen in places elsewhere, like our arteries. So normal arteries have a clear, wide opening. Blood rushes through these. Arteries expand and contract pretty dramatically. If you start running, your arteries get really big and really small because they're pumping a lot of blood. The problem is inflammation and damage to the lining of the artery can cause this plaque formation of calcium, and it will start decreasing the size of the hole that blood can go through. And this decreases blood flow to the rest of the body, and that can be a huge problem. These plaques, in addition, so if you have these plaques built up and then you decide, oh, I'm sick of laying on the couch all day, I'm going to get up and start running marathons. If you get up and do that and you have these plaques, they can be dislodged from the wall of the artery, and then these plaques can go into the brain and cause a stroke. They can go into the heart and block the heart arteries and cause a heart attack, a myocardial infarction. They can go in the lungs, cause a pulmonary embolism. They can clot in the legs, which is a DVT. So this happens due to damage to the arteries and inflammation in the arteries from too much cholesterol, too much fat, and then the lack of exercise allows these arterial walls to be still so that things can adhere to them. And if you're exercising, the blood is rushing through so much faster that things don't have time to adhere to the wall. So this is why you should exercise and eat healthy. And on that note, that's the end of the skeletal system, and I will start on the joints in the next video.